got to continually grow as a team, and you get a chance to do that coming out of your bye week and knowing you've got 11 opportunities ahead to really solidify what you are as a team. To me, 5-1 is a great start, but that means absolutely nothing each and every Sunday that we get opportunities to go play from here on out.
God, I love the Culture Shield. Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name is Dan Barreiro, joined as always by Justin Gaard, and look who's back.
Welcome back.
After her 1 week silent protest of the Emmy Award results, it's Lori Fisher. Lori, are you still going to be pouting, or are you over it?
No, I'm good. I took a bye week as well, I decided.
I see. Okay.
Bye week.
So, no, I'm looking forward to the next year, the next nomination, and hopefully our first win.
Maybe 5 will be the lucky charm.
You are
we'll
a
see.
glutton.
We're talking about the Emmys, if anyone is wondering. If you're
For
not
punishment.
Oh, trust me, they've been caught up.
How could they not
They're
know?
well aware we've lost.
Yeah.
Right. If you're
Again.
an avid viewer of Enough Said, you know that it's just
Honored to be
not our
nominated.
time yet.
Or something like that.
Well, let's move on. The Vikings are coming off a bye week, we know, and taking on the Cardinals this Sunday in Minnesota. Hopefully well rested and ready to go. They're 5-1 and have a 2.5 game lead over the Packers, although most of their wins have nearly given us a heart attack, with it all coming down to the final minutes in the fourth. The Cardinals are 3-4. Dan?
Guardsy, or Justin Gaard. On this show, you're Justin Gaard because we're
Very official.
Very official.
Very professional.
And not quite as low as, shall we say, loosey-goosey as we are on the radio. I want to throw some stats at you, and then perhaps you can help me understand the answer to my question. The Vikings stand right now 27th in the league in 20-plus yard pass plays. Last year they were 4th. Cousins ranks 19th in the passer ratings, our quarterback. Last year he finished 4th. Points per game, we're still not in the top 10. So explain to me how and why your favorite football team is in such good position at 5-1 coming out of the bye, even though we're only 3.5-point favorites over the 3-4 struggling, mediocre Arizona Cardinals.
I would say the number, well, first of all, that number keeps going down, too. It started the week. It started the Vikings were heavier favorites. The only thing I come up with, you're hitting me with this cold,
That's
which
the beauty of
it's
it.
kind of the trend of the show today for people that are watching, is the only thing I can come up with is, well, number one, we know they've been fortunate with who they have played. And included in that, we know they've been fortunate
And when they've played them.
and who's been available for those teams. Most notably, obviously, Miami would be one of them with Tua. New Orleans had a backup quarterback as well. So they've been fortunate along those lines. I do think there's something to be said about when they are getting those explosive pass plays, whether it's late in the game against Detroit, late in the game a couple of times against New Orleans, late at the end of the half against Miami, when I think they punted almost every possession in the first half except this one right here, which was with just over 2.5 minutes to go, as you can see there. I think they've just had the right plays at the right time, really on both sides of the ball, and they've taken advantage of it. They've taken advantage of that, and they've taken advantage about who they have played as well. That's the best summation I can give
off
you.
the cuff, those are, I think, fair answers. There's a part of me, I bring it up mainly almost to still say, how are we doing this? Because there is sort of a wonderment to the whole deal. But there is one stat we've used before that I didn't mention, and it kind of dovetails with your point. We have doubled up on the competition in points in the last 2 minutes of the first half and the final 2 minutes of the game. And that's
big.
called, closing out the half, and the other cliche, finishing the game. They have been able to get those drives. So they sit in a very good position. There's no question about that. But I think they're still facing questions, and they may be facing, other than what, if you go to obviously beat Buffalo, everybody's going to look at you differently,
right?
Which we're going to talk about because that's where Green Bay's got to go next year in a minute. But that's the odd circumstance is statistically you look and go, this doesn't add up, and yet the record, which is what it's supposed to be all about, it's undeniable. They're 5-1.
Remember what Glenn Mason always tells us.
Final point.
Figures lie and liars figure. That's what he always tells us, the great philosopher, Glenn Mason.
Glenn Mason is quite a philosopher.
He's unbelievable in terms of motivation and philosophies and things like that. So
Enough
just remember
said
that.
On that. You mentioned Green Bay. The Packers are in a 3-game losing streak with a 3-4 record. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers said this week the team is making a number of mental mistakes. He said a lot this week, and that the guys making too many mistakes should be benched. Green Bay plays the Bills on Sunday night. He also mentioned routines. They may need to look at their routines. Dan?
Well, there's the key quote from A-Rod this week. People in this society have a hard time hearing the truth sometimes. That was his reaction to people who are kind coming at him and saying, well, you sure you want to go this far? What's the point you're making? How is this going to be accepted?
Right.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong about what he says.
He's missing a part, though.
But he is leaving out some personal accountability because, again, liars, figures may lie and liars may figure, but the fact is, by eye test and numbers, Aaron Rodgers is not playing very well. Now, there may be others there are others contributing to it, but in terms of, again, I think the quarterback rating, he was number 1 in the league last year in the QBR. That's sort of the ESPN standard for measuring quarterback excellence. He's down towards the bottom. I think what's the number I got him at? I think in the 20s. He's 26th this year in that same category. So I think people would accept some of Rodgers' complaints, including the fact that they have failed him in terms of putting people around him, especially at wide receiver. But if he had some willingness occasionally to roll his eyes at himself instead of at everybody else, then I think the message would be more easily accepted. Otherwise, it sort of comes off as the grouchy old man, and I know that because I am one, basically blaming everybody else for the dysfunction that he in part has contributed to, especially in the second half of game.
Well, and if he's worried about mental mistakes and he's worried about attention to detail, I mean, attitude reflects leadership. To quote, remember the Titans, attitude reflects leadership, Captain. And until he's like, if I compare him to Tom Brady in this regard, like Brady will light up guys, right? And Brady doesn't always take full accountability
and break
for
boards and
break
things
boards
like
and throw tablets. But that there's a certain ethic that he's bringing. There's a certain expectation that he brings along about the business that he's doing or the business that he's working and how he's going about it. I don't get the same sense of that from A-Rod. And what's been fascinating to watch this season, it's been almost this cycle of you expect the Packers are going to rebound because of the pedigree. They don't. Rodgers says something in the post-game media that the head coach has to sometimes answer for it. He is clearly not on the same page. Then he goes on the Pat McAfee show on Tuesday, says even more stuff that then becomes the news cycle. By the end of the week, you've talked your way back into, well, maybe the Packers, this is the week they figure it out, and then they lose and the whole thing goes over again. As a Vikings fan, it's wonderful to watch, and you just hope it continues. But they could change the narrative, beating Buffalo on Sunday.
That would.
Then they're 4-4, and look, A-Rod is back. That's how wild the league is.
Well, and it's dangerous. I really believe this, to ever completely rule out both Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Brady in part because the division he plays in is awful.
Right.
Rodgers still because these guys are considered some of the best of all time for a reason.
Okay,
so that's the one caveat.
Justin, you tweeted earlier this week, shortest honeymoon ever. The Timberwolves season just started and already, the drama. Everything from losing a 35-point lead Monday night to what Anthony Edwards eats being a professional athlete. We know all about that. They did beat the Spurs Wednesday, 122. Edwards scoring 34 points, so he got us back a little bit there. They play the winless Lakers tonight, Justin.
A trap game. Yeah, trap game against LeBron and Anthony Davis and the circus that is the Los Angeles Lakers. What was so funny to me about this week, and I get the frustration because they haven't played particularly well, starting in the opener against Oklahoma City, they basically shut it down in the third quarter after looking great in the first half. They get outscored like 19-0 by Oklahoma City, who is not very good. We have learned here on Enough Said they're not very good. But when that tweet happened, Dan, we were not yet 1 week into the season. Now, I'm not saying we're overreacting. I'm not saying there aren't reasons why people are frustrated because they really haven't put together a complete game. They do have issues, certainly defensively. And the biggest issue they had, including on Monday night, which precipitated this whole thing, is they were acting like a team that has already arrived and is going to get home court advantage in the playoffs. And they're acting like I would expect the Lakers to act on a random Monday night against a bad team, a team that has pedigree, a team that has championships. And that is, I think, the biggest cause for concern because I still don't know if they understand that. The leaders on this team understand that, and they don't have a guy like a Pat Beverly who can kind of help them along when they're going through those droughts.
I don't think they have any leaders on this team, and that's going to have to change because every team needs one or two. What you hope is that evolves and somebody sort of emerges. But I think I raised my hand. I was one of those who overreacted, along with Johnny Krasinski, who had written a story that inspired your tweet. And Johnny
the Timberwolves
is
are
usually,
a mess.
He's usually even-tempered, but I think he saw the same thing I did, that we saw signs not of a team that's still figuring out who goes where, the pieces fitting together, but an unserious team that was back to literally not competing and engaging on the defensive end at all, and that should never be excusable.
Agree.
And you want to get in on early on delivering the message that that's not going to work in 2022-23 if you want to get someplace.
Said the Wild got another win on the road last night against Ottawa after beating Montreal on Tuesday night. That helps after those losses at the start of the new season. They stay on the road until Tuesday. They play the Red Wings on Saturday night and the Blackhawks on Sunday in Chicago. Dan?
Well, speaking of overreacting, after the Wild start, no pun intended, you'd have thought that basically, well, who's the goaltender we can steal?
Yeah.
Who's a backup somewhere else?
You were asking that question.
3 or 4 games in. Well, it was more Russo than me. But I think it was fair to say, for those who were more, I think, attracted to the notion of keeping Talbot and having Talbot and Fleury as your 1-2 or 2-1, whoever is the starter, was a lot more comfortable of a feeling going into this season. And when Fleury started out awfully bad, he was awful.
Yep.
I think it was fair to say, are we going to regret not having that option? Because the backup option they have is not proven and still is a question that needs to be answered. Fleury's performed a lot better. That has, I think, allowed everybody to breathe a little bit. The power play, which was a huge issue last year, not very productive, is off to a very good start in that regard as well. And so suddenly all feels well, I think, largely because of those two issues.
Yeah, and people were going crazy because they lost a bunch of games at home, which is unheard of for this team, especially the last couple of years, right? And in a league where points are at a premium and it seems like you're always chasing to either get the wild card or hang in the Central, you don't want to lose opportunities for points at home and have to make those up later down the road. What's interesting about the goaltending thing to me, Dan, is I thought we heard this summer that part of the reason why they wanted to do kind of the goalie tandem was because Flower is older. He's not, 30 years old anymore, 25 years old.
Correct.
And it was, well, we don't know if he's a guy that really wants the net, 60 times a year, right?
Yep.
Well, now in the first sit down with Michael Russo and Bill Guerin that happened in Canada over the weekend, kind of to quell the concerns of the mini crisis, Guerin talked about Flower being a guy that needs to play a lot so he gets into a rhythm. That was interesting because I thought we heard in the summer, well, we don't want him out there all that much because we don't want him worn down.
He told me that. If you recall in the interview, basically said, well, we don't want him out there 60 times.
But then, did I read it right, though, in the Q&A that he said Flower's a guy that does need to get into a lather and does need to work himself into things. So maybe once he works himself in, he's good by going in and out. But I thought it was interesting that they said he just needs to play more when the whole point of the tandem was so that he could play less.
Fleury, it's a fair point. Fleury has to continue to play well.
That's it. Yes,
but
the way that they're playing.
The reality is we still don't know that they have a backup goaltender at all. So all is not necessarily, I don't think we can celebrate yet that everything's fine and we're back to where we started, because that's the door that was opened with the decision to make the move on Talbot, which I didn't understand because Guerin convinced me we're keeping them both. He's under contract. I don't care how frustrated he is, but something obviously turned and he ended up making the move.
Rapper Kanye West, who goes by Ye, is being canceled after his anti-Semitic comments in the recent weeks. He's been dropped by basically everyone, his booking agency, his lawyer, Adidas, several other companies. Clearly has some issues, but mental health experts point out that cannot be used as an excuse for all of these comments he's been making. Dan?
Well, I'm not a big, as we've talked about over the years on this show, I'm not a big cancellation guy. I think the pitchforks get too agitated about getting rid of everybody. In this case, I think Kanye has made it almost impossible to do anything but cancel himself. I saw a quote from somebody, Kanye West is like a raging anti-Semitic Hindenburg pilot, carefree that his airship is on fire. It almost, if I didn't know better, I'd almost say he wants to do exactly what he's doing, because I'm not sure that there's any choice. The commentary that got this started was hideous. It's well beyond the pale.
Yep.
And so if I'm trying to stand tall for don't cancel everybody, this isn't the guy I'm going to fall on a grenade for. Obviously.
No, it's not. I mean, there's lines that you just don't cross.
No.
And there comes a point where you cannot be part of any type of successful society with it. Like, you cannot be rewarded when you have views like this, when you say things like this. I know people were concerned about how long it took for some companies to distance themselves from this. I think that's a little simplistic too, because I'm sure these contracts are pretty crazy, right? And they, at the end of the day, made the right call. If you want to be cynical and say they don't want to lose business, they don't want to be associated with whatever, they made the right call. But I'm not a cancel culture guy either, as you know, Dan. We've talked about this with Steve Swigum a couple of weeks ago. But there comes a point where you just go, no, you cannot come back from this. You shouldn't come back from this. And whether or not he needs help, then I'll say that. I hope he gets the help he needs. But in the meantime, the rest of us shouldn't have to wait for it.
Do you want that final point, Dan?
The only other point is I saw a story in Variety.com asking the question, should Kanye West music be banned? We start down that road.
Yeah,
we can try, but then where are you going to end?
Enough
There's
said.
a lot of guys and people who have gone way over the line, and I think, to me, I don't think we need to ban his music. I think the culture has made the points that were important and needed to be made about what he said, not really what he sang,
Enough said.
but what he's been saying.
Well, and he might not be banned. Like Peloton is just not using his music anymore.
And every company is free to do that. But to get rid of everything, I'm not big on those sort of authoritarian moves.
Okay, next up. Election day is quickly approaching, and one of the most closely watched Senate races is in Pennsylvania. Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Mehmet Oz, we know him as Dr. Oz, debated Tuesday night. Fetterman had a stroke a few months ago and struggled to communicate, leading some supporters to worry that could narrow his current lead. The Senate race could determine the balance of power in the chamber, so the stakes are high in this race, Dan.
Well, I hope that his wife doesn't hear the way you just described this, because you might be on her list as well. I saw a quote from Fetterman's wife. If this happened in a school, speaking of a reporter, I think it was an NBC News reporter, raising questions about how well that he understood what exactly was going on. If this happened in a school, she said, if this was a child that was ableist towards another child or a teacher, there would have been issues stated. There would have been new training done. And I'm saying, you're mad at a reporter for basically doing her job. It's a terrible analogy to me to liken this to what a kid in a school just trying to learn might have to deal with here. This is about a person running for the United States Senate, correct?
Yes.
This is rather important, I think, to voters, and they can all decide on their own to figure out, well, what kind of damage was done? What impact will that have on the ability of a United States senator to communicate? Those are all fair points, and you don't have to be ableist at all, I don't think, to point them out.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, and if you watch the debate, there were absolutely some tough moments. And I think the biggest question people would have is he able to do the job or not? Because I think we all understand what he's coming back from.
Correct.
And you hear from different experts on how long that takes, what that process is, but we're still pretty early on in that process. So I think it is fair to ask those questions, because I mean, there's probably 5 or 10% that want to be as mean-spirited about this as possible, right?
No question.
That's not the rest of us that just say, well, can he do the job? And there was even some evasiveness early on, right, about what exactly he was dealing with, how exactly he could move forward. So I'm not bothered by people asking the questions. I don't think you're not empathetic or sympathetic, whatever you want to do. You just want to ask those questions, because at the end of the day, that's the important part. The job that he wants, is he able to do it? I think it's worth checking in on.
His campaign has not been transparent. He has not given the medical, information that I think would be helpful in this, and that's part of the deal. You can make that decision, but you have to also live with the possibility people are going to react.
Time for the Enough Said lightning round.
Do we have enough time for the lightning round
We do
today?
if we get moving.
All right.
Not as many items as usual. The Gopher football team is back home Saturday, hoping to break a 3-game losing streak. They are 1-3 in the Big Ten. Keys to the game against Rutgers.
Well, you're
Justin.
gonna have to watch the Gopher pregame show tomorrow morning to get my official key. Actually, I'll tell you, my main key tomorrow is make a catch on offense. Make a throw, make a catch, get the passing game going. Regardless of who's playing quarterback, I happen to think Tanner Morgan will probably be back. And defensively, you got to stop giving up big plays. That was the biggest culprit on Saturday night against Penn State. Just big play after big play after big play. This was a good play by the wide receiver, but there were other wide open deals, including one play, Dan, where they didn't even cover a guy. They were just lined up in the wrong spot.
Next up.
By the way, this is a team that is in crisis. The others, probably a little premature, the Wild and the Wolves. Gophers are in crisis.
The rumors have been out there for a while. They're in crisis. It's official. Tom Brady and Giselle finalized their divorce after 13 years
Bums
of
me out, Dan.
marriage. Do you think, we were talking earlier, do you think they had a prenup?
Oh, I have a hunch they probably did.
She has more
I
money
would
than
say
him,
to Lori, that's another cautionary tale because you like to believe
how happy
in
they
these
look.
celebrity
Peace
marriages and
Oh,
it
look at
looks
that.
like, no, this time it's for real. This time it's love. It's fraught with risk and danger, and it almost always ends poorly. Just accept it and move on with the rest of your
Look
life.
how happy they all look. There's
Well,
the
and
family,
just remember,
there's the
too,
hugs.
everyone's blaming that he unretired, but they probably had some problems before that, too.
Probably more complicated than anyone.
Hard to address them when you're playing
Tabloid
football for the
issue.
You never
50th
know what
year.
happens behind closed doors.
No, you don't. That's
You need to listen to yourself, Lori.
very
Why are you lecturing us on this?
No. Next up, Elon Musk tweeted today, "Let the good times roll." He bought and has taken control of Twitter after a legal battle with the social media platform. The question is, what will the billionaire do with it now? People already testing the waters.
Gosh, I know.
Well,
and he's firing everybody, right?
I'll predict this. I'm going to call out all the thousands of frauds in, our business and other businesses who are going to swear off Twitter. I'm done with Twitter now because, now all hell's going to break loose. It's like everybody was going to move to Canada. Remember when Trump was elected?
Yeah.
Stop it. I'm calling you out now. You don't mean it, so you're not impressive if you're flexing, talking about, I'm now done with Twitter. 'Cause
Or are
you
they
can't help
tweeting
yourself.
that? Or are they? That's the irony. If they tweet
Well,
it
that's true.
and
Yeah.
said, "I'm it. This is
Just
over."
some more advice. Just when you wake up in the morning, don't have the first thing you do is go on Twitter, because then that kind of sets the plate for the entire
Is this
day.
your own personal podcast here? A self-help podcast?
Self-help.
What's going on the show here?
An idea.
I don't
Are you
know. I feel
branching
like
out?
there's
Do
a
that.
different vibe
Self-help
tonight.
podcast.
Help with Lori.
And finally, Halloween is on Monday, so get that candy, that expensive candy we told you about. But if you need a costume idea, we have an idea for you. You can be a host of Enough Said.
I love that.
This is a meme that's going around that
It's a
kind of
great one.
everyone's having fun with. It includes, if you get this costume, a mic, a blazer, and a button-up shirt.
Does it have to be a white shirt or can it be a color
Well,
shirt?
it can be blue or white.
I've got a little
okay.
pattern today. What does it not include?
It does not include a cell phone for your post-show selfie.
Or listening.
And a snarky attitude, and then I should have actually put there a hair flip as well. So
I
those
like
you
that.
have to do on your own, but otherwise,
A hair
there you
clip?
go.
Is that a shot at me?
I think it was.
Oh man,
I think it was.
That's cheap.
So there you go. So happy Halloween, everyone.
What is your costume, Lori, though? Your real costume? I know you've got to have one in the neighborhood.
On Monday, I'm going as a Pink Lady. I have a Pink Ladies jacket,
What is that?
and
Grease.
I asked
From Grease,
Sean
right?
if he wanted to
Okay.
do a white T-shirt, and then our neighbors who smoke, maybe they'd loan us the cigarette, like an old cigarette pack, and he could roll up his sleeves, and then there
Our
you go.
neighbors who smoke, going door to door and saying, "Excuse me, can we have some Parliament lights?"
And
What are you guys going on as? We have 15 seconds.
What kind of candy are you gonna? Are you just like individual little one candy kiss to each person?
No,
that
I
comes
went to
with it?
Costco. We're all good.
It's a Minions house for us. We've got Elsa from Frozen for the 4-year-old, which you have to, right? And then it's a couple of Minions, and I think I have to be Gru. I think I have to wear the cap and go as Gru for Despicable
Well, how
Me.
about we share our photos next Friday?
We'll see.
Mine won't be that interesting
see.
because I don't think I'm dressing
Okay.
up at all.
Have a
Call
good
your
night.
neighbors who
Sorry.
smoke.
Yeah.
Let them do it.